Okay, we're going to round off our design at the moment by having a couple of tables to sort of make it more efficient and better for the programmer to use. The first thing we're going to do is have a table for testing. We're going to write a test plan. Now I know we've got a section where we're going to test, and we'll put our results in this section, which is after we've written the program. But before we write the program, we're going to test, or we're going to say what we intend to test. And sometimes this will give us some clues to actually change our design before we code. So I'm going to start out a test plan here. I'm going to put a table in. Now there's no hard and fast way of doing this. I'm just going to choose a 3x2 table. There we go. And I'm going to have test number as a title. So I'll be doing lots of tests. In a real program there might be hundreds of tests and they need to be numbered, and I will refer to those in my test. So when I'm actually testing it, if this is test number 1, I will have down here the results of doing test number 1. So I'll say number 1 worked or didn't work. And I'll produce sort of screenshot evidence of that actually happening. So I number my tests. The next column, I'm going to say what the test was. And in the final column, let's just make some space here. I'm going to put what expectations I have, what I expect to happen. So there's my sort of test plan, and I'm going to have a heading called test plan. There we go. As it's a heading, I'm going to turn that red so we can see it in the document. So what do I mean by test plan? What can this program do? It's going to ask a person for their name. They're going to type in their name. They're going to write hello name. Now, what on earth could possibly go wrong with that? First of all, they might see the please enter your name and just press enter. In other words, type no name at all. And we normally call that an empty string. In other words, they've typed nothing at all. What do I expect to happen? It will display hello. That's what I'm expecting it to happen for this one. So there's my first test. So let's do some more tests. Number 2, what happens if they enter a number? So they're not going to write a name, they're going to write a number, e.g. 6. What do I expect to happen if they enter the number 6? Well, it's going to write display hello 6. Now that's a bit weird. It's nonsense. We unless you're Elon Musk, I think you're going to have a proper name. We might want to check that. So this is a point where I've noticed in my design, actually, maybe I could check for numbers and not accept them. So if they enter a number, say, no, sorry, that's wrong, please enter again. That is an area where I can change my design. We're not going to, because at the moment we don't have the programming knowledge to do that. So our expectations is it's just going to display hello 6. What happens if they put in something silly? Enters silly word, e.g. elephant. What's going to happen with my program? It's going to display hello elephant. So I can check that out and test my program for all of these items here. And the point of that is, if I've got my test plan, I expect to see the tests done. So test number 1 types in empty string, displays hello, and probably take a screenshot of that happening. But the important part here is that we always do the test plan before we write the code. I've had previous courses where they've written the entire program in code long before they've designed it, and they've tried to do the test plan and the design after they've written the code, and to be honest, it really shows. It looks nonsense. It's not very good. For you, when you're writing your program, when you're doing your project, I will expect you to give me all of your design before you even start coding, so that it's for real. Now, whether that's right or whether that's wrong, it really doesn't matter. The point is that you will have designed and thought about it before you've coded, and that's what the exam board are expecting to see. In previous courses, as I've just said, there's a little what we call caveat, that if if I think they have designed after they've coded, then it says award them no marks for the design. So that's a big thing. It's very important to the exam board. So I expect to see it. If you don't know what you're testing, put something in and try and think of the testing before you do it, because then you'll be awarded marks, even if it's sort of nonsense. So that's my first table for testing. Now, testing is going to be quite a few things. When you write your code, as you write it, you're going to make syntax errors. Your program's not going to run. You're going to correct them. That is called formative testing. We'll look at that later in the course. But that's okay. We don't need to write those down as tests. That's just fixing errors, formative testing. This test plan is something called summative testing. So when your program has been written and you've got rid of all the errors and the bugs in your code, then you're testing how it works and for what reason it works. That is called summative testing, and that is really what the test plan is for and what the test section is for. But we'll fill it out later. You'll see how it works. The last thing I want to do is go back up to the variables. Normally I have a table for variables. I don't just list the variables that I'm going to use. I actually explain what they are to show my understanding, to show that I know. So I'm going to put another table in here. I'll delete that in a second. So I'm going to have another 3x2 table. There's no real reason why it should be 3 columns and at all. You could have as many columns as you like, but I think 3's really going to help us describe what's going to happen. So the first thing I would need is the variable name as the column header, and then the variable type, so I'd need to know what kind of variable it is, and then I would need to know what the purpose of the variable is. Again, it's up to you how you do these. You don't even need to have them in this order. It just makes more sense to have them in this order, but you could have variable name at the end. There's no hard rule for this. So the variable I'm going to be using is called name. Now the point is, if you've got this table with all these variables, when I'm going through your program, I'm going to expect to see them in your program. So if you've got a variable in your program that doesn't appear in this table, I'm going to ask why. And if you've got a variable in the table that doesn't appear in your program, again, I'm going to ask why. So name is going to be of type string. What's its purpose? It's going to hold the name of the user. So we're just describing what it does. So purpose is good, or maybe you want to call that description. Up to you how you label it. It doesn't really matter. Probably purpose is a better word for it. But there's no hard rules for this. As long as you've got a table, as long as you can give me the name and the type and what it's used for, that will be fine. Sometimes we're going to have variables that do lots of different things, so maybe we'd even have a fourth column to explain things or give an example. It's up to you, but I would expect to see these tables in your design. So my design is pretty much finished. I've got at the top what the problem is. Then I've got my design section. I'm almost ready to hand this in to the teacher. I've got what the screen would, or what I expect the screen to look like when the program is running. Not a screenshot of the screen, because that means you would have coded it. This needs to be done before you've coded it. Then I've got a section saying what variables I need. Keywords I probably don't need at all. So I'm actually going to delete those from my design. That's helped me work out the fact that I need here output and input with write out and read in. That's helped me understand that, but I don't need them in my design, so I've gotten rid of them. Then I've got my the design of the code. So I've used a flowchart and I've used pseudocode. But if you remember what I said in the last lesson, we don't need them both. I'm going to leave both in. Personally, I would prefer just the pseudocode because I think this is takes up too much space. Even in the documentation, it takes up too much space. It's very difficult to write. So I would get used to writing in pseudocode. And we'll see more of that as we go through the course. And then we need a test plan saying what we're going to test, and that's it. That's our design. So really, we're ready now to start writing the code, and we'll do that in the next video.